we live in today, we're mostly governed by people who understand the economic affairs of our countries and the politics. And today we have the perfect example for that. My name is Florence Jito Mlenga, and I have a very special guest for you today on Beyond and Above. And this is no other than Jito Kayumba. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about Jito before we bring him up to the platform. So Jito is the special assistant to the president, and he's also one of the partners of Kukula Capital, which is a venture capital firm. And he's also sat on many boards such as Airtel Zambia and also Zambian breweries. And he's also spoken on platforms such as the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. But this is his story to tell. Let me welcome Jito. Jito, welcome to the platform.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you for coming here to share your story with us.
Thank you. Well, it's my pleasure.
All right, Jito, we'll get right into it, right? You're someone who's shared a lot about being consistent in our journey and knowing your niche. So at what point did you discover that you belonged to the world of finance?
Sure.
What made you discover that this is my area?
Sure. You know, everything, if you want to be successful in anything, or if you want to find yourself, you have to have a reason why. And most of the reasons we're driven by in life towards the thing that will make us successful or our purpose usually has a pain point connected to it. You know, the thing that frustrates us, the thing that we want to achieve that makes the world better or makes our lives better for whatever reason. The other motivation, I touched about a pain point, right? Mm-hmm. Pain is connected to fear. There's also an element of love, right? Some people are motivated by things that they love. They want to, you know, do better for their community. They want to do something that uplifts their family out of poverty or something along those lines. For me, I think the thing that really drove me, and I've told this story before on a platform, which is the TEDx platform, where I talk about when I was very young, and I was being driven to school by my father, and just the recognition. I remember I was about 8 years old, and recognizing that, you know, my circumstances were better than many others. And the moment that recognition was felt was looking out the window and seeing a kid my age going to school as well, but he was walking, and his clothing was tattered, and I could see that the conditions he was in were not good at all. But in my heart, I knew that this person is not deserving of those circumstances, and my circumstances and his were by the luck of the draw. You know, nobody chooses which parent you're born to or which home you're born to, the circumstances you have. So then I awoke in the sense of inequity of society, and the feeling of guilt sort of overcame me, and I was thinking to myself, like, it's so unfair, and there's nothing wrong with that kid, but I could have been him, and he would have been in my place. So the curiosity around how do you make society better? And how do you create social impact? How do you create jobs? Whoever that kid's parents are, how do you create an environment where they can have a better income? And I thought broadly around the fact that not only am I going to school with clean clothing, I've had breakfast, I'm going to a school with a desk and chalkboard and so on. We have people who don't have those things. Yeah. So that curiosity, I think, just continued, and throughout life, I began to search and looking at all the different things that, you know, lead to people being in an environment where you can make a decision, or your actions can have some sort of an impact on society. And I've always liked business, but at the same time, I always liked the idea of public policy, being in an environment where you can make decisions that improves people's lives, which I'm fortunate to be in today. But of course, in between, other things transpired, and ultimately, I would say that was the real spark. Eventually, I began to seek out mentors, seek out situations where I can understand. I spoke to people who are older than me. I was very curious. Exactly. If a friend of my parents would come over and I saw that they were doing something significant, I would be that guy who would pester them, you know. So tell me, say it's a successful banker, I want to understand about banking. What made you successful in that place? So I think one of the answers really is also curiosity, in addition to knowing what makes you tick, what pulls your heartstrings, being highly curious, pursuing knowledge. And I think having that desire, I think the desire to achieve something within the realm of the thing that made you uncomfortable is ultimately what will help you find your purpose and find your niche.
Okay, let me take it back to how young people these days, they're all over the place, to be honest with you. So it's very difficult to discover what you're really good at.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that's going to be really helpful for someone out there, being curious. I don't know if you'd want to expand on that, because I didn't get to ask you that, but like, what advice would you give to young people who are struggling with finding out what they're good at?
Sure, that's an important question. We live in a world that is very distracting. There's social media, there's Instagram, there's Facebook, there's TikTok, this stuff will drain your attention. It will draw you for hours, which takes away from productive time. And of course, people can watch TV on demand, YouTube, Netflix, you name it. So it does, unfortunately, clutter the mind and takes away from things that actually people should be looking at to find a way of creating value to the world. And I think it comes down to that. People should look within themselves and ask themselves, what am I skilled with? What am I endowed with? What do I have at my disposal in my community? And how can I use that as a way to add some sort of a benefit to uplift the community? Because I feel like anyone's purpose should always be connected to being a solution to a problem in society. So we're all problem solvers, regardless of what you do. Whether you're cutting grass, whether you're a beautician, whether you're a bus driver, whatever the case there is. So in the realm of problem solving, we have to figure out where are we, who are we, what do we know, what are we passionate about, and how do we fit within the context of society to solve problems. I think that's really where we would be able to find ourselves. And I think let's not be distracted by the social media trends and the controversy that exists, because it's very easy to do that. And I think we should spend some time also associating with other young people, not just other young people, other people, even older, who can give you a bit of direction. That's why I like to avail myself to programs like this, so I can share such things. Because who knows, whoever's listening to this interview, somebody might discover, like, you know what, that speaks to me. And that might eventually lead to them sort of finding themselves.
Well, thank you very much. And we're going to go on a short break. But when we come back, we want to now go back to your roots and understand how you rose up to where you are right now. That was Jito Kayumba, ladies and gentlemen, the Special Assistant to the President, and you are watching Beyond and Above. But we're just going to go on a short break. Stay tuned. You are still watching Beyond and Above, and today we are joined by Jito Kayumba, Special Assistant to the President, and he is just sharing with us his journey and the advice that he has for young people. So now, Jito, we'll go into the next part. Yes, we've talked about the niche, understanding where you can solve a problem in this world. But I just want to take you back. You are now Special Assistant to the President.
Yes.
You have everything. It seems like everything was figured out back then. You know, you did political science, if I'm not mistaken, with economics. And then you later on did business administration for your master's. So it just feels like you knew that you were going to be Special Assistant to the President, which is not likely. So is it okay to aspire for a position, or maybe you just need to work hard in a certain direction? What's your take on that?
So the first thing I will say is that it's okay to have a goal, to have an objective, and to aspire for something and work towards it. You can literally plan your life around certain things. You can plan your life around being a chief executive officer. You want to be in banking and you want to run a bank one day. You know that, first of all, you have to look at what are the prerequisite elements that make a great chief executive, right? Within whatever sector you want. It really just depends on one's own sort of ambitions. My ambition actually was never ultimately to work in government. I'll tell you, it was an initial thought. So naturally, if anyone's going to do political science, the natural inclination is that they're looking to work in a political environment. Mine was actually very different. Because of the way political science is structured, it's a multifaceted discipline. It includes a little bit of legal aspects, historical elements, because society and public policy, the way it's structured, the way, countries and all sorts of societal systems are governed, depend on multiple elements. There's economics, which is very important. You can't have politics or economics and vice versa, because they all affect each other. You've got the element of appreciating sociology, right? There's an anthropological element as well. It's so much, and I really enjoyed that discipline because I knew that I could use that as a means to even enter business and understand business from a perspective that wasn't too narrow. If you go and say do accounting, then ultimately you're just going to be an accountant, right? And it's okay, nothing wrong with accounting. I like that discipline. It's something that I had to learn along the course of my work, because if you're doing valuations of businesses, business analysis, if you don't understand a P&L, cash flow statement, balance sheet, then you can't make a decision strategically about an investment into a company, because that's how you learn its value. So the whole element of what I studied personally, it was really meant to make me relevant in the business world. Okay. So that when I get into because I knew I wanted to be in the corporate world and work within, the whole element of going into venture capital wasn't one that I wasn't sure of. It's okay not to know what you want to do when you're very young, but at least have a general idea. Then as you continue with your studies, you start to now focus, you narrow down. When you get to understand, okay, this is who I am, this is how I face challenges, this is how I respond to certain things, then you kind of have a sense of, where you can position yourself. So for me, going back to your question of, is it okay for one to aspire for a certain role? It is certainly okay. And you can plan your life around it. My own story, my own journey was focused on one element, but it introduced me to a bigger world. Because when I got into the corporate world, years after I graduated and started doing a bit of entrepreneurship and then finding my business partners through, again, networking, building relationships, and really finding some sort of camaraderie around the people who became my business partners. It opened my eyes to even elements of governance, because I realized that if I want to be a big investor, if I want to do things in this economy, then there was one big institution that was being a blockage to some of my aspirations. And that institution, unfortunately, was government. So now I began to think around, maybe I need to investigate how I can be a part of that to unlock opportunities. So when I do go back to business, or when people who are in business like myself, can essentially have an opportunity to essentially, scale up their business, because the rigidities aren't there. And these are the things that we're trying to unlock. We're trying to unlock, say, for example, there's legal elements that make it hard for a business to grow or for new investment to come in. Having an understanding of the private sector makes that possible. And that's really what ultimately landed me in this particular role. But it's a long journey. It's a very long story. So this is my way of summing it up.
Okay. Yeah. Now that's very interesting. It's not like you wanted to be in that space, but you wanted to understand that space to run the space you wanted. So you did mention about mentorship at some point.
Yes.
Who would you say was your first mentor, and what would you say mentorship has done for you thus far?
Mentorship is important. And one thing people have to remember, I will answer in fact, I have to reflect on who my first, there's a first mentor at a different stage who's relevant to a specific line. I'll start by saying that you have to remember, mentorship is a relationship. It's not a person who becomes like your teacher or like your coach, because no one really has the skill set for that. You might find a very successful person, which, by the way, every mentor is typically a successful person, or at least has excelled in the area you want to be in, or you want to succeed in. So it has to be a relevant person. But most importantly, cultivate a relationship where it is, you, the mentee, pursuing the mentor, finding out exactly how you can improve in what you're doing. And you have to remember, not only should a mentor be relevant, you as a mentee have to be sure of what you want to achieve. Otherwise, you could be learning from the wrong person. So for me, it was clear that I wanted to be successful in business. And the people I used to pursue to be my mentors were successful business people. These were people who were chief executive officers, investors, people who really run big businesses. And whenever I got that opportunity to have a moment with them, I would make time to have lunch with them. I would incentivize them having me in their space, whether me doing them a favor. Can I be the person to write notes for you in that meeting? That's my way of learning. It's like what the Indians do. There's a system where they've got these experts called gurus. Gurus don't teach you by ascribing lessons to you. What they do is that they do what they do on a daily basis, but they have you just observe them. And that's how the apprentice becomes a master, by purely observing. And that, to me, that's the best form of mentorship I had, was that curiosity led to me attached to people who were, in a very a successful position, and I saw their habits. I said, okay, this person gets up early. This person works out.
Definitely.
This person's healthy. This person's very good with their time. Look at they follow a calendar. Look at their demeanor when in the room, when in a meeting. Look at the hand gestures. Look at the cadence of their voice.
Exactly.
Look at their attention to details. Look how they remember everyone's name. Why does that matter? Then I would ask after, why does that matter to you? Then they would respond to me in a very specific way. It's because, number one, people matter. And if you can recognize that people matter, you can do more for people. And when you do more for people, the more people you serve, the more benefits you get as a business person or as a person in any other environment. So all that is part of mentorship. And for me, when I was a young student, I would say the most impactful mentor, I had one person who was a pastor. So you can call him a spiritual mentor. He helped open up my mind to appreciating God and his place in my life, because he has a huge place in my life. As a force for making sense of my life. Life is not perfect. We are not capable as human beings to do everything and navigate through life without his sort of him as a shepherd. And to me, I needed that. So that was, I'd say, my first mentor. Then another was a young entrepreneur who was very successful in business, and he was a complete shark, you know. And it was interesting first of all, we are Zambians. We're calm people. We are somewhat, what's the right word to put it appropriately? We can be a little bit relaxed. We can be, we're not
aggressive.
We're not aggressive. Yes, that's exactly, I'd rather say not what we are, but what we're not. We're not very aggressive.
Yeah.
We're not overly persistent in a way that, and we don't want to bother people with persistence. But this person was all that. He was everything that I wasn't naturally. Because I was grown up, I was raised to be humble, raised to be somewhat careful, tiptoe around issues, not too direct with speech. So meeting somebody who was firm, direct, hardcore, didn't care about whether or not he offended you, but focused on getting the goal, was very interesting to me. It was an eye-opener. Not to say that that's what I aspired to become, but I appreciated the elements of his character that made him successful. So that was one. And then they just kept on rolling in. And by the way, the last point I'll make on mentorship is it's not necessarily about those you've got direct access to. It's also books. I've got mentors I've never met. I've got mentors who died years before I was born. I love Think and Grow Rich, right? Which is one of my favorite books. The person who wrote that book was taught by Andrew Carnegie, one of the greatest business people of all time. And I've learned from Andrew Carnegie without having met him, even though he died, a century before I was born. I'm able to learn lessons from his life story. So mentorship is a combination of people you meet, but also learning from what they leave behind through literature, through the things that they did, and just observing that and applying it based on what you are trying to achieve.
Wow. And I do remember the first time not really the first time, but previously, you did talk about how we are not persistent, we're not aggressive, we don't go for what we want. One no and we're down. That's very powerful. And the way you've put mentorship, you've highlighted how we need to actually follow up with these people. I do recognize the fact that we can also just read books and be guided by these people. But I also want to take you back to the part where you mentioned that we need to follow up with these people and learn from them. So maybe that brings me to the area of networking. You're one person who's built the right networks. And I do believe for you to be where you are, it was the right networks.
Absolutely.
So please run us through that. How can one create the right networks? Is there a formula of doing it, or what best advice would you give to young people? How do they present themselves to these giants, so to say?
Sure. And that's an important question. You can't truly become successful without a network. We are the average of, say, the 5 people we're closest to. Usually they say, if if you're around 5 successful people all the time, chances are you're the 6th. Or 5 people who have a certain habit which are not very positive, then those traits will be in you as well. So you have to be very particular with the people you associate with, even with your peers. They've got the capacity, the ability to instill with you values that could either make you or break you, or keep you maybe mediocre, right? So we have to be very, very careful. Who are we drawing on our energy from? Because I feel like the people you associate with, it's their opinions, all these things, they filter into your mind. Our brain downloads information all the time. And that really feeds into the outcomes that we have. So, that's the first part. The second is being very deliberate, very strategic about where you are physically going to be at a given time. And the people that you're going to come across, are these people relevant to your journey, to your success? In my case, that I would attend functions where maybe I'm not even worthy of being there, but I'll still show up anyway. Because I had the crazy idea that maybe, this is, if I meet that person can change my life. If I get that person's card, that phone, and I will not waste it. I'll send them that message. I'll call them. I will reach out, and I have to be relevant. And you don't just say, hello, hi. It's, hi, my name is so-and-so. I'd like to meet you over a cup of coffee. Because these people, you have to remember, successful people, especially those who at least I wanted to network with, if I met a successful person, right, and a person who I really, really wanted to connect with, I wanted to understand them first and foremost. What makes them tick, and what would make me relevant in their life? Because you have to remember, a person who's successful hardly has any time. So who am I? I'm not in his priority list of people to talk to. There are bigger people he has to deal with, and also the thing that keeps him successful are focusing on his priorities. So I put myself in that person's realm by being a person who adds value. It could be adding perspective that is new to that person, that helps them, or two, adding value. It could be doing a favor. I mentioned before that one of my mentors, I just said, can I just take your notes? I'll be your free assistant. I would literally, because I recognize what they did. They would go for meetings with these high-powered people, and I would literally be just a note taker. I'd take the minutes, and I was very young. And then after I'm finished with the minutes, I'll go print them nicely and do an aide-memoire. Give it to them so that they can essentially say, wait, this person's made my life easier. Or I can do favors. They say, listen, I know you've got this and this going on. So the more you're aware of that person's situation, then the more value you can add to their lives. So networking is one where not only are you building relationships with people who should essentially help grow your career or whatever it is you're trying to achieve, but be relevant to them. When they think of you, they should think of a solution. They should think of value. But when Florence calls me, it's something important. They're not bringing a problem. They're calling me because they're adding something of value. They're giving me a different perspective. Even when you're dealing with people who are older, you have to remember that the world is changing. There's things that are happening every day. There's algorithms, there's cryptocurrency, there's all these things that older generations don't understand. If you're able to articulate that to somebody who still wants to be relevant, even in their stage of success, then they'll try to keep you close. So I think we need to be we build a level of competence in our own right and not assume that the person we're going to connect with is going to give us a competence. And, really, and the confidence as well adds to building a network and not being afraid to reach out and stay. And you have to remember, if you take too long to keep in touch with people, they'll forget you.
Definitely.
So it's important to find a way to be consistent. Even if you have to have a list of the top 10 people you need to contact, without a fail, every month you need to see this person. Whether it be going to the office. And by the way, make life easier for them. Don't make them come to you or meet you somewhere outside their realm. Insist to go to where they are. Because they say, okay, I'm in my office, so this person's going to show up. So that, and I'll tell you a little hint. If your determination must be such that if you want to see someone important, you put them in a corner by being specific with the date and time you want to see them. Can I see you on Thursday at 14 hours or Friday at 14 hours? Oh no, I'm busy at 14 hours. Okay, how about 12? Oh, then you realize that you start to narrow in on their calendar. You're forcing them to look at the calendar and give you their opening and say, okay, at 10 o'clock I'm free. Bang, you've got it. You put it in and then you show up. And be patient, you wait. Show up early. So these are things that I used to do, and I to me, I don't like to consider myself a great example because I feel very lucky, very blessed. The grace of God has been really, really upon me, but that desire to grow, to be relevant, to be significant, was always driving me. So all these factors are what I would say enabled me to network effectively, because I knew what I wanted to achieve, and I associated with people who had some role to play in me getting to the destination. And also, first and foremost, not just seeing someone as a ladder or a stepping stone to succeed. It's about appreciating genuinely that person, not using people, but that person feeling as though, okay, this person actually values me. This person's a friend. Can I be reliable? So, you know, when networking, you have to, the last point I make really is, don't just be the person who needs something from someone. Make yourself available to be useful to the other person. Once you do that, then that network, you'll be able to have better reciprocity. And that reciprocity will enable you to easily ask for that favor, that contact, that ask that you essentially need.
Wow, thank you so much, Jito. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here with Jito, and he's sharing with us about networking, mentorship. I hope you are taking notes, because this is some powerful things you will not find out there. Now, Jito, we're going to go on a short break, but when we come back, we're going to go a little bit now further into your story. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go on a short break. This is Beyond and Above. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Beyond and Above. We are with Jito Kayumba, Special Assistant to the President. I like to highlight that because I see it a lot on LinkedIn. But ladies and gentlemen, we've been learning a lot, especially about mentorship and networking. Jito, we're going to go into our next question.
Sure.
Most Zambians grew up from an average home or an average upbringing, and most of them are less privileged. And you had highlighted when we started that your journey was a bit different. You were a bit more privileged than others.
Absolutely.
But how did you succeed? Because at the end of the day, those who are more privileged get to misuse their privilege.
Oh, yeah.
So how did you not misuse your privilege and use it for the right things and become successful out of it?
Yeah, you know, that's an amazing question. There's been times where people have a misconception that my own advancement has been on account of privilege, which nobody can hide the fact that I was lucky to go to certain schools, have certain exposure. I think exposure is a big privilege, because exposure is access to knowledge that not many people have access to. So you're able to use that knowledge and apply it. And to me, that's, I'd say, fundamentally one of the reasons why I think I've moved in the direction that I've moved. But you're absolutely right. A significant number, when I think back, you know, past generations, you think even down to the Kayumba era, you know, very successful people came out of that era, you know, business people, ministers, you name it. And you sometimes, and you really, all due respect to those families, you find that not many of the children, right, become successful. Not many of the people of wealthy people, people of means, become successful because of ease, right? And there's this, I think one of the key requirements for anyone to be successful is you need to have hunger, right? The desire. And I think the more comfortable you are, the less likely you are to have that hunger, the desire to break through and succeed. For me, I think what instilled the hunger was the first moment of empathy, right? That recognition that, okay, this world is unfair. I'm lucky. I'm in this vehicle. I've eaten. I'm wearing clean clothing. And there are people in our society who don't have that. It means that fundamentally, this situation can flip, right? If I don't get my act together, I could be the one, I could end up
the one on the other side.
Exactly. And it's not to say that lack of initiative is the reason. There's many reasons people are poor, right? Even just the society and lack of access to education, even nutrition, and all these factors. We have many people, you know, who, and in fact, poor people don't deserve to be poor, right? And this is why, as a government, as a society, we have to take care of people who are less privileged. We have to find ways to equalize opportunities. The outcomes you can't control, because you can be in the same classroom, there could be 20 of you, you all have the same book, same teacher. Some will have an A, some will have an F, right? That's a difference. So that's the difference from an outcome perspective, but from an access to opportunity perspective, everybody needs the opportunity to have access to these things. And I think this is really a goal, and these are things that we are very passionate about. Personally, I'm very passionate about that. So going back to the whole point of, you know, what sort of made me sort of have this level of aggression and desire to not only succeed, but to walk steps that led me to succeed to some extent, is the awareness of, I think, what I just shared. But then beyond that, there's also this desire that for me to create value, I need to be significant, right? To have some level of significance. How do I get significant? I need to add value. If I don't have value, then I'm not fulfilling what it is that I feel I need to do for my society, for my country, for my family, for really, you know, to fulfill the goals that I had. And I think I take that to heart. And because I associate with many people, and I'm also privileged to be, working in the office that I work in, we are servants of 18 million people. So all 18 million matter, and we interact with, people from all walks of life. So I see it even more now, and see the need to obviously put more solutions on the table that creates jobs, creates economic value, and so on. But on the issue, and it's something I reflect on from time to time. I think the other thing, a huge driver, particularly in business and wanting to succeed, was ultimately to leave a mark that makes my community better. I'm obsessed with the idea that, we can't just agree to take the world for what it is, that we have to take the world for what it can be. And the difference between that is what we do on a daily basis. So I'm obsessed with the idea of, playing a part in really leaving a mark. I also believe, it's not just a belief, it's a fact. We are mortal. We will pass on one day, each and every one of us. And we only leave back, of course we can leave back offspring, but we also leave legacy. Say, what did we do? Did we leave the world better than we found it? And to me, that is such an important element, fundamentally, whether it be environmental, whether it be societal, whether it be economic. We have to find a way to essentially, leave things better than they are. Even in a small context, whether in a small community, whether it's a country, whether you're running a business, you're adding value. Somebody who's drawing value from your business by being an employee. I'm obsessed with that. I count jobs all the time. I like to post it on my social media. Oh, this month we've created X number of jobs. Or that business created, because you have to remember that each job, each income represents, and the president talks about this a lot, there's about 10 beneficiaries from one salary. It's incredible knowing that, so say you create 1,000 jobs in a given period, you're talking about 10,000 beneficiaries. So maybe within that 10,000, it could potentially be that kid I was so sort of saddened by seeing. Mm-hmm. So to me, that reminder, it's always there, is, wherever that kid is today, hope he's in a good place, successful, and found his place in society. But I'm haunted by that. So to me, that's the driving force. That's the reason I do what I do, even in business, even now in government, and even when, and by the way, I'm not in government forever, right? This is it's a temporary occupation. When I go back to the business world, I want to continue to do that. Invest, run, venture fund, grow businesses, create jobs, and just really be call it an asset and a credit to society.
Okay. From everything I have heard, I've seen that mostly it's been about impact for you. And I hope the world will start thinking that way, because we're living in a world where it's just me, myself, and my family, or it's just about me all the time. Yeah. So if only people could also think about impact, and I really love how you have put it. And I hope the less privileged and the others who are privileged can use that as a driving force to stand out and to do the most out of what they have. Absolutely. So even as we conclude, I feel most successful people that we get to host on the show, I feel there's always something that they want to be asked but are never asked. Is there any question that you feel you should have been asked on set but you've never been asked?
It's amazing. I think you just did. The question about what drove me, being somebody who had a degree of privilege, what's the difference between me and those who've sort of not had the conviction, capacity, you name it. Yes. And again, with all due respect to them, I really think you have. Okay. And maybe, to supplement on that question, I can say that, ultimately what we need to do as a society working together, this is why knowledge sharing is very important. For me, how I increase others' capacity to have privilege, so to speak, is sharing knowledge. There's some secrets that successful people know, and you find that within certain groupings, people know what it is, whether it be networking, whether it be, how do you, access finance, these are things I like to share openly all the time, because it elevates people who have, the desire to get those things, to essentially be able to have access to those things, because it's freely available. And in this world of the internet, social media and so on, not only is there controversy and gossip and nonsense, but you also have a lot of good things. There are people speaking things that can impact you, impact you positively. And I want to be a part of that, leveraging on those platforms to increase it. Because I fundamentally believe that we are all the same. Whether you are born impoverished or at any other sort of placing within the social strata, we are literally all the same. We're all children of God. And anyone who has anything of surplus has a responsibility to play a part in uplifting those who don't have. We have to figure out a way to lift people, who don't have access to these things out of poverty. There's certain basics we just fundamentally need to have. And that's the beauty of, being an African, right? That definitely. At the core of our culture, we have that Ubuntu, right? Mm-hmm. I am because you are. I can't feel okay if you're not okay. And that's how I felt in that particular moment. I keep on going back to that because it fundamentally is the core. Is every decision that will be made, you always have to go back to that core. It's like, am I doing right for society because I know that in my role where I have capacity, I've got authority, I'm privileged, that I need to do something for somebody else. And to me, that's what fulfills me. That ultimately is what makes me happy. And I think one way we can close off this discussion is for people to think about what irritates them most about society, what hurts them the most. And the fulfillment that they'll have out of solving that is going to be unmatched, and they should pursue it. Is it clean water, right? Is it making sure that jobs are created? Is it access to certain things? Is it eradicating deforestation? Is it improving healthcare in a certain area? Because people have witnessed the worst things happen to people who don't deserve it. Somebody dying from malaria or from diabetes when there's medication. If those things were there, then the person would not pass on. So we need to sort of have a mindset that's oriented around, let's solve problems. And, so long as my neighbor's happy, I will be happy too. Because if my neighbor's hungry, guess what? My fridge is at risk, right? We live in a society that is completely symbiotic, right? Yeah. We are all it's all interconnected. Mm-hmm. So I can't sleep at night comfortably, and none of us should sleep at night comfortably knowing that other people are suffering or struggling. So whatever we do should be put to resolve that, and society will be so much better. And to me, I think that's fundamentally why I am happy to do what it is that I do.
Definitely. Thank you for highlighting that, Jito. And I really do love the Ubuntu spirit that we have as a country and as a continent. And I hope that it will be passed on to our future generations so that we can work together. And as you mentioned, you can't sleep while your friend is suffering. Mm-hmm. So that should be something that should drive us. Mm-hmm. To conclude it off, I feel like successful people do have mistakes that they've made in the past. They do have achievements they have made. So what advice would you give to Jito 10 years back?
Wow. I think the only advice I would give really is to truly, truly trust God. Once you do that, fundamentally, we need to have a foundation of whatever it is that we're doing moving forward. We trust Him, because it's only through Him that the things that we desire, the path that we're supposed to be on, is what will be carried through, and will be shown. And everything has its time. Nobody should be in any hurry for anything. That it will be well. And I just love that saying when people say it shall be well. To me, I'm a huge believer in that. That's the only advice I'll give him. Just stay true to your beliefs, to your core values. Trust God above all, and you shall be well.
Thank you, Jito, for joining us today. I feel everybody who has watched this will have a shift in their mindset, because at the end of the day, this is what Beyond and Above is all about. Sharing stories to give people a mindset to do greater things, because we are hosting people who've gone beyond and above in their careers and their talents. And that's exactly what you have done. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your time. We know you're very busy. Yeah, and we really appreciate your presence.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Jito Kayumba, Special Assistant to the President, and he has shared with us tips on mentorship, networking, and he also shared something very interesting about being less privileged or more privileged. Please do watch the entire interview if you didn't, and thank you for joining us. This is Beyond and Above. My name is Florence Jedediah Mlenga, and thank you for joining us.
Hi everyone, my name is Jito Kayumba. I'm the Special Assistant to the President for Finance and Investment.
It's been an absolute privilege to be here on Beyond and Above, interviewed by Florence Jedediah Malena, talking about numerous issues that would add value to the lives of young people. I hope you enjoyed this interview and wishing you the very best.